into history, you have to pay the price.
Bill is the best classic arcade gamer of our era.
You'd have to have a really good game.
You want to put a score up, you're competing against everybody in the world.
It's not even about Donkey Kong anymore.
He's a very devious person. He works things out to his ends very well.
Well, Billy Mitchell always has a plan. World Record Headquarters can help you.
Well, maybe they'd like it if I lose. I gotta try losing sometime.
Hey everyone, welcome to the filthiest, dirtiest episode of the podcast, episode XXX. With me today is GG Maximo, the Orc Commander. The man has many names. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey everybody, what's up? My name is, you can call me either like GG Maximo or Orc if you want. I've basically been around the shmup scene since, probably since like early 2013-ish or so, and then officially just starting to submit scores from like 2014 onwards. I am also covered games on STG Weekly and also done some co-hosting on there, although not as much as I'd like to in like the past spring/summer, just because I've been focused on some personal stuff. But I'm hoping to get back into that soon, along with participating in some other tournaments.
Yeah, Callus Cup's coming up, right?
Yeah,
like in a week
Cup.
or in like a few days.
No, a month, because it doesn't start till November.
Oh, balls. That's right. Well, that's good for me, because I wasn't quite prepared, so that's good for me.
Same here.
Well, awesome. So, I brought you on to this episode because I thought, okay, when I started the podcast and I started using Roman numerals for the episode numbers, I thought, okay, I'm going to hit episode 30, episode XXX. I better come up with a really cool, spicy topic for the episode, right? And so I thought, What is more spicy than cheating in shmups? I thought it'd be fun to discuss this topic with you.
Definitely.
It's a really interesting time to talk about cheating, just in video games right now, with all that's going on with all the cheating controversies and speedrunning. I don't think there's been many other scenes where that's been as big as in the speedrunning community.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with Billy Mitchell, with Todd Rogers, plus with all just like the shenanigans on speedrun.com that seem to be going on lately. And all the videos where people intentionally make fake speedruns and then submit it to the score board, and then the mods look like idiots and then they make a YouTube video out of it. There's those too.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So, I thought it'd be fun to start out by comparing, as of today, our thoughts on overall cheating in shmups versus cheating in speedrunning, how they look pretty different. Because I think there are some listeners out there who aren't into shmups as much as speedrunning, funnily enough. So I think it'd be cool to give people kind of a good comparison.
I guess in terms of like if it's easier to or harder to cheat in shmups compared to speedruns. I mean, the thing you have to keep in mind, especially in shmups, is that the community, ever since like I've looked at this past history on different forums from mid 2000s onwards, it definitely isn't as large as other communities. So generally, in order to encourage participation, usually the majority of tournaments, especially back then, were just kind of focused on take a screenshot, whether that be using like snipping tool or some built-in like key command that just takes a screenshot of your currently open game window, and then you just upload that as opposed to just say like, here's the score submitted. But over the years, because of different events that have gone on, whether they've been at different like shooting competitions or just stuff I've posted online that just doesn't match up with what the person posting understands the game to be about, I've seen other people institute additional requirements, such as in some places IMPs for everybody. Even some places use this very specific version of MAME in order to facilitate accurate IMP verification.
Yeah, wolf meme. The wolf. So there's a lot of ways we can go with this, but I think one thing that I want people who maybe aren't in the shmup community or aren't even like that into shmup scoring and stuff to realize is that the player base for shmup scoring is very small. It is tiny compared to something like speedrunning. In fact, I would say that there are specific speedrunning games that probably have more active players than the entire Western shmup community combined. So, because of that, it has its pros and cons. And I think one of the pros is that the incentive to cheat is not really there as much as with something like speedrunning, where you get a lot more attention. You could maybe jumpstart your YouTube channel by cheating. You know what I mean? Or you could like gain a bunch of friends on Discord or whatever. I don't know the speedrunning community that well, but it seems to be more enticing to cheat in speedrunning. That seems to be the thing.
Right. I've definitely heard that before just from a couple other people, especially because sometimes, when somebody shows out of the blue, I'm like, hey, I got like sub 20 minutes in like this category, and then it turns out that's really high up in this leaderboard, so that gets a lot of heads turning.
Yeah.
And with it, sometimes the scrutiny doesn't always come along because people are just kind of wowed at, wow, this guy did it.
Yeah, I always wonder too. So if someone shows up and starts destroying scores in a shmup like Moglar or Kiwi, we definitely pay attention to them, right? It's like kind of an event, like, whoa, pay attention to this.
Right.
In the speedrun community, is that just a more common occurrence where like some random dude shows up and's like, bam, high score, bitches? Or I guess low time, bitches?
I'm not entirely sure on that one, just because I don't have a ton of experience with being like new on the scene when new scores, I guess, or times are posted. But I would imagine that there is that tension that comes with it.
Yeah.
And depending on how the site's set up, some places will have more scrutiny than others. It really kind of depends on the way the community is set up, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I thought it could be good to start off by kind of comparing the way we submit scores to the shmup leaderboards, I guess you could call that, compared to speedrunning.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually really surprised when I first joined the shmup community at how lax the, I guess, standard for submitting scores was. That actually very surprised me, because coming into it, I had my video. I was like, oh, I better put my inputs on screen. Like, for some reason, I got the impression in my head that shmup score submission was like very serious. You're going to get really heavily scrutinized. And then I show up and I make that post about, hey, we should do videos and stuff. A lot of people were very against that idea. So what was your experience when you first joined the shmup community and started submitting scores? What was your experience like?
Back when I actually started getting invested in stuff in 2014, I think, at least with like the first couple games I played, it was just really kind of just posting stuff on the side. But yeah, even on like the Shmups forum, which has pretty much been the main hub from like the mid 2000s up until maybe I would say 2015, 2016, where the player base kind of starts getting invested into other space. A lot of the scoreboards just really have lax requirements, even for games I thought would have like serious pedigree, like DDP, for example.
Right.
Could just
write the score down, right?
Yeah, basically, just screenshot, write down your score and your name, and then bam, just gets uploaded.
Yeah, I actually was talking to Prometheus about this earlier in the podcast episodes, and also just recently. And yeah, he was telling me that I guess he's a lot more suspicious of score submissions than most people. And so he doesn't believe the score unless he sees like video evidence of it and stuff. So I thought that was interesting. I think, personally speaking, I'm not really that suspicious of a person as far as if someone submits just a screenshot or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also kind of like that, I don't know what you call it, like social pedigree that kind of really helps with that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, yeah, we'll get into the specifics later, but like if a new player shows up and reports 500 mil in Dodonpachi with no video, and maybe a screenshot, maybe not a screenshot, you're like, okay, this is pretty nuts. But if Jamers submitted 700 million tomorrow, I'd be like, okay, but he has videos of all his runs, but you know what I mean? Like, okay, Jamers got 700 million. Yeah, you notice that there's that social pedigree too that helps you a lot.
That reputation that just gets built up over time.
Yeah. And it's interesting too because ironically the players who have the most to lose are like the players with that social pedigree, right? They're the ones that if they cheated it would be a way bigger deal than we have specific examples of just someone shows up, they're like, yeah, I got super high records or whatever, just people don't believe them and they move on with their life, so. And I think one thing that is good to emphasize for maybe people who aren't as familiar with the shmup scene is that some shmup players play mostly on PCB or on like setups that make it very difficult to capture video.
Mm-hmm.
Personally speaking, I think they still should. That's my opinion. I mean, you got the arcade machine. I mean, you're almost there. Just, maybe $80 more to get a capturing setup. So I think that's also another reason why video is maybe a little less common than in something like speedrunning, where you can just, at the worst, hook it up to a VCR or to a DVD recorder or whatever.
Right, just the multiple options.
Yeah, so what are your thoughts on kind of the standards of expectation when it comes to submitting scores?
I mean, at least for me generally, at least like with new players and stuff like that, I think the context behind like posting new scores also does kind of help too, because like you said earlier, it's kind of a little bit, it does give you a little bit of suspicion when someone just kind of waltzes and be like, oh yeah, I got this score in, let's say like Donpachi or like Dodonpachi.
Right.
But sometimes what might happen too is if people usually explain like a little bit behind like the run and stuff like that, then
right.
Sounds like it's matching up with what's being posted, then I would be a little more inclined to just believe.
Definitely.
I think it takes like a little bit of time to kind of establish yourself and then have people kind of figure out like what's your pattern behavior. At least I know in my case, I have not always been the best in terms of just releasing information about games I've cleared or played, but that's because a lot of times I'm just kind of throwing stuff like here and there and didn't really have a good recording setup until probably like a year or two ago.
So did you have a situation where you got a pretty ridiculous clear or whatever and people were like, hey, what the hell?
No, nothing like that, but it's just, I felt like if I just submitted a screenshot or whatever, it just wouldn't seem like legitimate enough in my eyes.
Yeah, definitely. And my personal views on my stuff is it must be video. Like, if I do it and it's not video, I might just redo it, to be honest. Because there was this, I got a score. So, Dan, Maku, and Limited 3, for up until a few months ago, could not capture that game because it was so resource hungry. It would, like, chug to no frame rate if I tried to capture it and play it at the same time.
Right.
And so I finally got an external card and upgraded my CPU or whatever. So I had to do all these workarounds. So I could capture it in the past, but I had to, like, set up external stuff, and it was a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
So I remember one day I was at my parents' house, and I just had my laptop, and I fired it up, and I got, like, a really high, it was my highest score ever. Fuck, now I gotta redo this, because I didn't capture it. So, yeah, that happened to me, too.
Yeah, I mean, what I was going to say, too, is just that, especially, like, before, probably, like, 2018 or so, what I would need to use in order to record anything was this HP laptop that just constantly overheated.
Yeah.
So as a result of that, when I'd be using OBS, if I didn't put settings down to like way low, it would just constantly like skip frames and it wouldn't look good. But then the lower bit rate didn't really help a lot of things either with video unless I just happened to have the space for it. And then, at the time, it wasn't as resourceful as I was now. So my hard drive space was just pretty limited. I was constantly just deleting stuff here or there just to make room.
Yeah, I've been there.
So it kind of made it a situation where I just kind of like pigeonhole myself until, I got this desktop I'm currently using, which it's a hell of a lot better, and I really should be using it more often than I am. But at the same time, too, sometimes when it came to just rendering these videos, then it took like a long amount of time.
Yep.
I think even with when I was doing STG Weekly on Assault Plus, I remember that the video my run, which uploaded, was about 70 minutes or so, and it probably took like the entire day just
Oh, jeez.
to not only like edit it, but also just get the final result that just didn't like kill the bit rate actually looking good. That was probably one of the reasons why I didn't do like video evidence as much for just games that I was playing more casually in a sense and not really focus on scoring, because in my mind it was just like I didn't really want to go through the process of just waiting hours upon hours and just having my performance suffer on other tasks I need to get done for school or work.
Yeah, that's funny. You guys, people listening, should check out the early videos of my YouTube. Yeah, like my first Donanpachi clear, you can definitely tell the bitrate on that because it was just OBS on my laptop. Yeah, I had to crank those settings really low. Same thing with my... The weird thing is my Metal Slug video is pretty dang good quality. It was on the same... I'm like, how did I get the Metal Slug video so good, but the rest look like shit? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it just depends on the game too. Like, especially there's like some games where it doesn't matter too much if you're a low bit rate depending on like low resolution, but then there's other games which just will kill your bit rate, and a couple that I can think of in my mind's like Plus Alpha, Crimson Clover, Wishihime Sama Futari.
Yeah. Yeah, Futari. Any of those visually busy, you need a really solid capturing setup for those, otherwise they look god-awful.
Right.
Shmups are weird because in one way they are extremely hard to get video evidence of, right? If you're playing on arcade hardware, that's a bitch. On the other hand, if you're playing on emulators, especially as of late, before, I did Shmup Arch and everything, everyone was playing on Shmup MAME, which has input recordings. And in that sense, Shmups are extremely easy to capture because you can just get the input recording, right? And so I always thought that was kind of weird how people, are still, if you were playing on emulator, why wouldn't you just change your input recording into a video, or at least submit your input recording, which I know a lot of players did do for a while. And I still see players doing that. I would say these days, I wouldn't do that because it's just kind of inconvenient for whoever wants to watch your run, right? They have to load up the input file and all that. But anyway.
Yeah, it takes time.
Do the video, and if you're really hardcore, add the input file into like the video description or something.
Yeah, that definitely works.
So we've talked about the expectations as far as, okay, so you can get away with just writing down your score in Shmups, right? And in speedrunning, it's becoming more and more common that you need to submit video evidence, right?
Yes.
And so I thought it'd be interesting now to start specific examples of cheating that has gone on in the Shmup community and how it compares to some of the speedrunning cheating we've seen and the different types of cheating that you can come across, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was writing up a list of all the ways I can think of that people have cheated or you could cheat. And so I was surprised because not all of these I have seen in Shmup. So let me know if you've seen something like this before. Have you ever seen a spliced run in Shmups? So splicing is where you take segments of a video and you just splice them together, right? So
right.
Have you ever seen a spliced Shmup run? I don't know that I'm aware of knowing about a spliced one.
In my experience, no, just because some of the other ones we'll touch on are not only way easier to do, but also less time consuming. You don't have to worry about editing it. So I think that's probably maybe more common like in the past of someone early video days.
And I was thinking about it too, and I feel like Shmups might be harder to splice than...
Right.
Because here's the thing, right? Let's say you are going to splice a run on your Sega Saturn or on your Super Nintendo, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you can instantly load back into that state anyway.
Yeah.
Let's say you want to segment out your run like they would do in a game, right, where they have a save and then they just go back and time together. Well, in a lot of shmups, especially on consoles, there is no checkpoint for you to come back to in the same way. You
Right.
can't like load into the final stage and then do the final stage 8 times or whatever.
No, so people will probably notice if there's like a difference in position pretty easily.
I just feel like, yeah, splicing doesn't seem to be common within shmups, probably because of their nature of, scrolling, and then also there's not really checkpoints per se, not like a real checkpoint. So I don't think it's even possible if you use like stage select to like try and splice together stage select runs, because your score wouldn't carry between the stage
It
select.
wouldn't carry over most of the time, like especially in cave stage select stuff. I don't see it.
I don't really see splicing being a common tactic. So this one I wasn't aware of. I think this is like a shmup only thing. Pause buffering, right? I never heard about this until recently. So can you explain to the people what pause buffering is?
Right. So generally what happens is that most of the time, at least you see this a lot off with most ports up until probably like this generation, but basically what happens is that the player will they hit their start button quickly to briefly pause the game, but then they immediately hit it to go back into the game. So basically what this does is the continuous pausing and going back to the game is not only slowing down the speed, but it can also make it easier to get for tougher dodges that you might otherwise have difficulty getting through. The most common example I've seen of this was the infamous Fixie Neon replay for Mushime Futari God Mode All. Even though that port was done by M2 of all guys, surprisingly you can just pause buffer, and I wouldn't be surprised if there are other examples of games both like from 3rd, 4th generation on where you can just utilize that same pause buffering for your own runs if you want to go that way.
So when they're pause buffering, are they setting pause on like a turbo button and just flipping turbo so it's like do 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 and it's like slowing the game down? Or are they pause, play pause, play pause? Because I don't know, that seems like, I mean, obviously it works, but man, what a task if you're really doing that. How are they doing that exactly? Are they using like a turbo button to get the pauses to go and then they're just playing in slow motion?
I'm not entirely sure, just because when I looked, a lot of the original information that was relayed by her regarding like that particular video just got deleted because you can edit your posts on the farm.
Right.
But I think the other thing that just kind of set it off was original release was, even though on the actual replay itself, it doesn't really show like, oh, this person is constantly pausing. There must have been some sort of setup where you can just constantly like pause it and the game won't show as like the pause menu popping up while you're in the actual replay. But people will still notice it because of weird movements that...
Right, like juddery movement, right?
Well, just like jerky ways of like micro dodging for like a pattern that you wouldn't normally do if you were just playing the game at normal speed.
Yeah.
I think on that specific video, Bare Knuckle Roo has like a very in-depth comment just like on the different stages and how their movements and stuff like that just look not only bizarre, jerky, weird stuff that you just wouldn't see like if the game were just scrolling normally, but like it would, because it'd be running at normal speed and you need to anticipate that.
Yeah. So it sounds like pause buffering, while you can technically do it, it's hard to get away with, I'm assuming, without making it look completely bizarre when people watch the replay back. Like, okay, what the hell is your ship doing there?
Well, yeah, because basically, with those jerky movements, it just kind of signaled to people that this person didn't really understand. Like, you got to have some sort of a route to get through the game, and just the movements there just kind of show like this person doesn't really know what they're doing, so something else to suspect.
Yeah.
People test it out, and then it's like, oh, it looks like you can just constantly just pause and then go back to the game. It doesn't disable the replay when you're doing that.
Right.
Whereas like newer ports with what you've seen from M2, like the shot triggers on Garega will actually, when you pause it, it gives you like a notice on screen of like having to wait a couple seconds before it throws you back in.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And to my knowledge, I don't think you can do any sort of like pause buffering for replays, at least on any of the Shock Triggers ports.
But they figured that one out. So that's pause buffering. Like you mentioned that one video there. I don't think it's really common. Now, how about replay stealing? Right? I think there's some cases of replay stealing where you basically just take someone else's video that maybe is less known, or maybe it is known and you're just stupid, and then you pass it off as your own video.
Yep, I've seen that for like a lot of... Sometimes it happens to like higher replays, and sometimes it happens to just mid-level scoring replays, but basically what will happen is that somebody will just create their own YouTube channel, and either they might do it manually or they might just have someone pick it out for them, but then just post the replays and just say like, oh yeah, this is like either my own, or even see sometimes where it's just, there's not even a description. It's just literally the video there and that's it.
Yeah, and that's always a pain in the ass for me doing the video index, because I put the player's name, right? And some of these videos have no player name, and they have nothing. There's no information at all. And so when I'm going to put in the player name, I'm like, okay, is it the channel owner that owns this? Who owns this video? So that always drives me absolutely nuts.
Yeah, and it's difficult sometimes too to figure out, unless sometimes it could just be like, is the date recent that the channel was joined, or... But that's not always an accurate indicator either.
Yeah. And so then we come to the big daddy of the shmup community. So I think this is clearly the biggest problem with cheating in shmups, even though some people wouldn't consider it cheating necessarily, but I'll get to my gripes with this. And that is what I call the task option select, okay? Where you post a task, but you don't say it's a task, but you also don't say it's legit either. You just kind of present it in a way that makes it seem like maybe it's legit. Maybe you're... Like World of Long Plays is a really big example of this, where they post non-task videos on some of their stuff, and then tasked videos on other stuff, but they don't identify the tasked videos. And so
right.
You'll go into the comments, and all these people are like, wow, congrats, man, this is awesome. And you don't see the guy owning the video or the channel doesn't write back, oh, this is just a task. They don't mark it in the channel that it's a task. They just don't say anything.
Yeah.
So you can't call them out. Because I've seen like an argument where someone was like, hey, this is a task. And then the other person's like, then some other, it's YouTube. So someone's got to argue with you. Someone's got to argue. Person's like, oh, but they never said it was legit either. So it's like, fuck you. It's a task. And you're trying to pass it off as if it isn't. Oh, that drives me crazy. It drives me crazy because, for one, I have the video index, so I'm constantly, like World of Long Plays, I'm not even touching that. I don't know if it's legit or not legit. Sometimes, some of the videos, they go out of their way to write, this video is legit, and then they have the player's name. So I'm like, okay, hopefully they're not lying here. So, And I think that's super common. The most common is the option select task, where they don't say that it's legit, but they also don't say it's a task either.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially because, like, with World of Long Plays, they've been uploading channels for, like, over 10 plus years now. And basically what they kind of do is just, there's different people that are, like, interested in, like, covering these games, and then they can just use whatever method they need to capture a long play. And that's just game from, like, point A, beginning of the game, to the end. But then, the murkiness comes in where basically they don't specifically say, like, this is a tool system. Like, you kind of have to figure out, is this legit? And this is kind of where understanding, like, game knowledge might come in to kind of determine that. Sometimes it might be easier to tell based on movements that just don't seem natural. Like, one example I saw was Shadow Surge posts a lot of no damage videos, but it's clearly using methods where it's just enemy behavior is manipulated in a way that just doesn't work in a real playthrough. It's clearly on display, and one example of that was a game I've actually won, Dog Yoon, where he did a no damage bosses video, and there was one particular boss that was kind of concerning to me, which was the 7th boss. Now, in a normal playthrough, most people beat this boss by going to the top left corner and using a red weapon called homing fire. And basically, the reason they do this is because if you're trying to face the boss head on, if you don't lose a life up to that point, the rank is just so high that the balls just come out like way too fast usually to react, especially because he's pretty low on the screen to start off with when he's assembling his modules. But if you stay on the top left-hand corner, you can just continually hit him and not have to worry about any of his attacks. And of course, with the whole thing that you have to make sure to not destroy him with like continuous fire, because the game can actually soft lock and you have to reset. But
holy crap.
Basically what the guy in this video did, he decides to not only use this method of, I'm just going to use the default blue laser in order to take care of this guy, but then can just tap dodge like throughout like the whole remainder of them. Like, there's no way you can just be doing that legitimately if you're trying to get from point A to point B in a run, because it's a 45-minute game. So I mean, there's a lot of factors that just kind of built into just suspicion in terms of there's no previous like notes of, oh, I'm working on this. The fact that it doesn't show any of the normal stage portions leading up from each boss and, showing it's completed, going to the next stage and the next boss, is just purely boss segments.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that World of Long Plays Dodonpachi replay where the dude's dodging in between the pink bullet walls of the 6 attack. So people not familiar with Dodonpachi, these walls exist to not be dodged, okay, by a human being. To dodge in between them is not only stupid, I don't see anyone actually doing that, and then the task he was doing that, I was like, the way you need to dodge that pattern is kind of complex, but his solution of, I'll just brute dodge the walls, no, that's not legit, there's no way. So, yeah, another example of that. Yeah, and I think there's tons of them, so Plasma was mentioning that there were some Japanese ones too, where...
Correct.
Yeah, I asked him about if they were arcade players who were using tasking to, like, kind of forge their scores, but they're actually legit players. But he's saying no, it's kind of the situation where the arcade community has no idea who they are, and they're just putting out these ridiculous tasks and not marking them, so...
Yeah, and then the even worst part is that then they get uploaded to channels like Replay Burners, which actually do have legit scores mixed in, so that it just kind of confuses people in terms of like, is this actually legit or not? Since a lot of the people commenting on there are not going to know the difference unless they have extensive knowledge of the game.
I'm sure they snuck one by me, because, like, okay, it's some Japanese player playing like crazy people, but they're Japanese players, so maybe it's legit, So...
I mean...
They probably snuck one by me, I'm sure.
Yeah, I know, like, Replay Burners, for example, does have AZK-BAC bids who, all of his bids are just Taz. Even though he has a variety in different genres as well. I think he does have a couple of shmup ones on Replay Burners. And yeah.
Yeah. The problem with this is a lot of people would say, so what's the big deal? Like, what's it matter? I mean, they're not on the leaderboard, so it doesn't matter, right? And I think in the world of speedrunning, maybe that's not a big deal because of how much exposure speedrunning has and how saturated it is within gamers. But shmups are not that way. And so it is actually very possible, and I have a perfect example of this, that the only vid you see is an unmarked task vid that's showing you bullshit strats that don't actually work, and you're watching the game like, who are playing these games? Like, what the hell? And so my personal example is before I was a shmup player, I was into Metal Slug, and I was going for the Metal Slug clear, it's kind of my first foray into arcade type style games beyond, my childhood. And the only replay I watched was the World of Long Plays replay. And at one point I was just like, I gotten that far enough into the game where I was getting close to clearing it, and I was watching that replay, I'm like, no, this shit is not legit. No, the stuff he's doing here is not legit.
Fun fact, the World of Long Plays fake runs of DDP and Metal Slug are by the same player. What? A legend.
And then I looked up like the player, and I looked at his YouTube channel, and of course he's got all these different like random games, tasks and stuff. I was like, okay. So he goes from tassing metals, or he goes from scoring Metal Slug to the next day scoring some first-person shooter. I was like, okay, this shit is tasked.
Right.
The problem with these videos is they push down the legit runs, right? In YouTube, they push them down by quite a bit. And then they also give newcomers really bad information or really false information about how the games are actually played. And so they're a personal pet peeve of mine. They drive me crazy.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I've also seen it too with a couple of live streamers. One very notable example I can give is a streamer called Vortex Queen. And basically what the deal with this person was is that she basically live streamed a bunch of Mega Drive Genesis games of varying genres, but also including shmups as well.
I've never heard of this. Is she popular or not really?
Well, the interesting thing is that I was actually on her Discord server for a while, so I kind of got to observe what happened there. And from what I could kind of surmise, it was basically like one of those, I stream games, but then I'm also like incorporating my graphic design elements on there. So she from like these really weird stuff gameplay where it's just like I invert the screen at this point in the playthrough, or I do like this wave effect, and then from like these robotic voices, and then I guess because of that, it built up like this fan base of people who were just like very cool creative work here. At the same time, though, there were a couple of times where I remember she was playing the Hellfire port on Genesis, and I just remember like, I think it was like either the third or fourth boss, but she's like doing some like weird maneuvers, just like basically circling the boss the whole time. It's like spot dodging stuff, and I was like, I don't think this is how it works in the real. And some other people had very similar suspicions with beat 'em up playthroughs of like Streets of Rage as well as Musha. And then a couple of people just cheekily kind of pointed that out in chat, even though they just mostly got ignored.
Yeah.
But on some other Discord servers, a couple of us just ended up discussing it for different examples. And then I think at some point last year, a player named Zuck, you've probably heard of him. He plays like a lot of beat 'em up stuff as well as shmups. He basically made a tweet saying like to Vortex Queen, since you always claim to be playing your games live and not restreaming input files pre-record vids, then I do hope you can explain how these GIFs contain the exact same inputs. And with this Twitter thread, he links 3 different examples uploaded to Imgur where basically the exact movement is the same every single time, and 3 different playthroughs, quote unquote, because she didn't mark any live streams as Taz. It was just all like, I'm playing this live.
Right.
But the score counters the exact same every time, arm level, form she's using, as well as lives counter and her options counter, and just the movement. It's like, at that point, it's like you did 3 separate playthroughs, yet for a game like that section that she was playing, it's like you really had the exact same input for those 3 playthroughs.
That's interesting.
So I think basically what happened after that tweet is then she ended up like going silent for quite a while amidst some other stuff, blocked off everybody access to like view their message history of her server. And then only about a couple months ago did she actually start streaming again, but then this time actually adding when she was doing live playthroughs and which ones were tasked. But
was she stealing the tasks, or was she actually like creating the tasks and then playing them back? Do you know?
I would suspect she would created them and then just played them back on her channel, but threw in those graphical effects as to kind of not arouse as much suspicion, just because it's like, oh, look at this. This is an interesting way of displaying the replay.
Decoy method. The classic decoy. That's pretty clever.
But it was. But when I first kind of started realizing it, I was just like, that is kind of a genius way to get people in there, especially because a lot of people were kind of fooled as to the true nature. Some people even thought that like other people were making up when those allegations first started coming out, but once people started massing examples and just kind of comparing them in different channels, such as, I know like Pasky had a server for a while where a couple people posted examples like Street of Rage, like AI behavior just not being like the regular game. that
Right.
point, it just becomes too hard to ignore, even among the few of us that were watching her streams.
Huh. So this is an interesting thing to bring up, right? Because when you have something like a leaderboard, it's clear that you could just, at worst, ban the person from the leaderboard, right?
Yes.
But what do you do about stuff, like what, as the shmup community, can we do about stuff like World of Long Plays and, this lady, like, as far as, I mean, I'm not saying, like, do anything, but, like, what can we, I don't know, like, do to get people to look at the legit runs rather than these fake runs that really have nothing to do with these scoring players, who are playing the games. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I've always
Yeah.
wondered about that. Like, I'll leave comments in the video and be like, this is tasked or whatever, but I mean, that's as much as you can do, maybe.
Yeah, the problem is that when you're kind of pointing that out, it's the person, if you like call out the person, in front that's saying like, yeah, this is a Taz, a lot of times it's like they kind of know what they're doing, but it's very hard for them to change their behavior unless it's like almost kind of a crowd mentality to kind of descends upon them. Then maybe they might start labeling things as Taz or live. But I think personally, just having the more resource and like kind of a centralized database that people can have access to, it gives more points of reference to people being able to compare like examples of actual legitimate 1cc's or like 2all compared to just random playthroughs on the net.
Yeah.
This is, of course, just kind of hypothetical because, I've seen create a centralized database that everyone in the community can access. Definitely not an easy task, and it's definitely not easy to always get the word out there and just let people know, either those new or currently existing, like, hey, this exists and we need to use this as our main database. But
yeah,
I think we should really try for that because, I mean, at least in some other areas, I thought like scoreboard, like indexes might be kept up more to date than they are now, like on the forum. But
yeah, I've been working on the video index with Plasmo, and I think, yeah, early on we had a conversation about whether or not to include tasked videos, like that ones that were either marked as tasks, which are very few, or even to like get that World of Long Plays review and put tasks. Like, this is a task, even though they don't say it is.
Yeah.
But I decided, you know what, I'll just exclude the tasked videos. I think there might still be some on there that I marked as tasks, but but I feel like with shmups in particular, just there's so much more legit videos that are buried and I think people should be checking out. So I was like, I'll just ignore the tasks for now and just put the legit runs on there.
Yeah, I would agree. Just more points of reference for videos gives, I guess, like people a bigger chance to just kind of self-analyze and just see like, here's examples that you can utilize if you're interested in X game.
Yeah, and the sad thing about shmup videos is that some of the most legit replays and plays have like 10 views. And so you can't actually find them on YouTube unless you do what I do and literally go through the entire directory for like 30 pages or something, to the point where it runs out of videos and starts just giving you channels. Like, did you know if you just keep going and going and going, it'll just start giving you channels? I didn't even know that until the index.
Yeah, honestly, like I knew in the past there were ways that with like YouTube's algorithm you could actually like you could signify like if you want to view like a specific topic, but then filter it by view count going from like highest to lowest and then lowest to highest, or even do it by like upload date. But look at a couple examples for like this video. It's just even that doesn't seem to really be working. Besides, you can do highest to lowest, but that eats up so much time just for finding stuff.
Oh my god, yeah, it takes hours.
It's got to be a better alternative, honestly.
Yeah, YouTube is not friendly to shmup replays, except the task ones that get thousands of views. It's very friendly to those. So, we've talked about the general, so now let's talk about some specific cases of shmup cheating. I guess some infamous cases. Oh, this is the fun part for some people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these cases coming into this episode, I was not familiar with, having joined the community very recently. And so I had to do some asking around and some investigation discovery here to get some of these ones. So the fun part is I have no idea who most of these people are, so if I hurt their feelings, I'm sorry, but you cheated, so.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is the LUY cheating in STGT 2011, right?
Yes, week 2 for Dio, which, yeah, that was a shooting game tournament that was held on the Shmup forum. And basically what happened is I don't remember if this was like midway for the tournament or if it was like a little bit earlier that week, but this guy named, we call him like Loy or Luy.
Right.
He posts this 20 million replay for Dio, and so saying something in regards to like crush my spirit, along with some other text that was like very hard to follow. But a lot of people were understandably like kind of impressed because, especially if like scores are being presented below what he was like getting in like a 2-all before that. Especially if scores as high as that, besides Sakraken got like 22 million that same week.
What was the fake score he posted? How big?
The fake score he posted was 20 million, so it probably been, I think, number 2 or number 3 on the leaderboard.
Okay.
And basically what happens is that Sakraken does a little bit of sleuthing both in and outside the board, and then based on what he saw at the time, he kind of surmised that this guy was not actually playing legitimately. And the reason for this was, I don't actually have a screenshot for it, but because
Tiny Pick or whatever is dead, right?
Tiny Pick just died out of the blue like about a couple weeks ago and just nuked its entire history with it. But basically described like, along with the score on the top left-hand corner, what's normally supposed to happen when you clear the game is that it clears out your lives total, and then also clears out any sort of Ps that you've got with that which represent power-ups.
Does it cash them in for points, like in Dononpachi?
The lives it does, but not the Ps just are supposed to clear out.
Okay.
Normally. It's just extra lives, you get like additional score for that. But basically, he found out that if you're using additional cheats such as something called maximum firepower, they will stay on the same screen. And, in combination of this, since it was just literally a screenshot posted along with the score, there's no way to verify who's actually playing legitimately. Especially because the person, finding this evidence is Sakraken, who got 22 million that week. And also posted a replay of said 22 million. And to kind of counter this, Loy's defense is something surprising that, in kind of broken English, that he doesn't know what happened. I don't know how to cheat in games. I'm so bad with computers. Shmups Farm is the best place ever. Don't ban me. I was so focused on the game that when I cleared and took the snapshot, I didn't even notice the small P icons, but I do remember that the rest of the Ps were golden. I currently work 12 hours a day, and the rest of the time I mainly play shmups. No more Loy.
And then he pieced out, right?
Or
did he come back?
Well, he posted a couple more scores after that, but that was pretty much the last shooting game tournament he ever participated in. And he hasn't been active on the farm since 2011.
Okay. Yeah, I remember reading that post too. So he was saying, wasn't it, that it was his friend's arcade machine or his friend's setup?
It's like he was borrowing his friend's computer or something.
I don't know. That seems like a classic way of deflecting whether they cheated or not, right?
Yeah. The weird thing too is that Plasma, accordingly, like this guy actually has some pretty legit like good scores in other games like Blazing Star. So it just seems really weird that he went out of his way like not notice like such an obvious cheat there when playing, not only a game that is not easy to 2-all, but also a 20 million nowhere near easy to figure out unless you get like years of practice and just understand like how the game works.
Yeah, and I always have trouble kind of getting into the head of someone who gets caught cheating. Like, it's kind of fun to put yourself in their shoes. How would you react if you were cheating and then got caught, right? And a lot of people seem to just kind of disappear, or, you know, like what you say, have like make little excuses and stuff like that. But if his story was true, that his friend's computer was cheated and he didn't realize it, you'd think he'd just say, oh shit, you know, don't, you know, like, oh, I'm so sorry, I had no idea, I hope you can forgive me, like, this was a mistake. I wouldn't just quit. That's what I'm saying. Like, if I was a shmup player and something like this, and it's just some kind of, you know, tournament or whatever, that wouldn't end my shmup career, is what I'm saying. But I guess for some people it would, so. Well, obviously he cheated, but you know what I'm saying?
Right.
If you were a legit player putting hundreds and hundreds of hours into the game, or let's say you didn't cheat, right? But people are accusing you that you did.
Yeah.
And you disappear? That makes no sense. I'd be like, fuck you. I'm playing. Fuck all of you, right? Not, you know, I'm never coming back or whatever, so I don't know.
It could be just one of those things where it's like on the internet, people just kind of want to remain.
Yeah. So that was 2011. So then next year, STGT keeps on giving, right? So the 2012 STGT. This one I had the most trouble following when I was going through the posts and stuff. I don't know if posts were deleted or if it's just really inside talk, but I had a really hard time following what exactly happened here. So I'm hoping you can shed some light.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of a confusing endeavor because a lot of the information just kind of got lost over the years in easily to find places. But basically what happened is this 2012 shooting game tournament was being held by a guy named Dex. And what happened was that they were playing a game known as V-V, or it's officially known as V5. It's also known as Grindstormer for localized US audiences. But the gist was that people were playing it during that week. You could submit your scores as a screenshot along with your name, and that was pretty much it to just verify it. This basically went on. Week proceeded as normal. Besides a couple of like troll posts here and there where people were just posting it like, I got a score of 500 on stage 1, and I'm really getting good at this. Because it's like they didn't really care too much about the game. And there were a couple of other in the next coming weeks. Like I remember one guy, I think Third Strike, posted some weird low score of like some other alternative name, and that ended up getting zeroed out. Then on the final week, after people had submitted their scores, a player known as Radical basically came forward and he's like, hey guys, just wanted to let you go ahead and know that the score I posted for V5, which is like 13.5 million or something, is fake. And basically just said something about like, I could link to the reasons why I did this, but I don't think it would change the fact that it's still fake. This
right,
is just
I saw that post, yeah.
And then it started, and I think what happened around that time, because the timeline for this is not really clear, but basically what happens is that Banana Mac was kind of messing around with some other people and basically told another player named, we know him as Gus, to kind of falsificate. And then Gus decided to take that and just fake the score to just make a point about like these shooting game competitions are like stupid or something like that. And then Gus went ahead and convinced other people to kind of join this charade, which included a couple of other people. I think people like Trippy13, Esu Penetics, and Radical was also involved as well, as mentioned earlier. And then what they went ahead and did was they organized this IRC group called Kuso Play to kind of go ahead, just plan out the details of what they do and just post what scores they were going to for V5. And I think what happened is that shortly afterwards, those IRC logs basically got leaked and people became aware that they were just posting these fake scores and stuff like that. And then Dex went ahead and kind of invalidated the scores, but I think because of that incident, as well as just other drama with people complaining about like, here's the way I think the tournament should be run, and just constantly bickering between threads, what ended up happening is that the tournament organizer, Dex, decided not to host another tournament ever again after that point. And Trap ended up taking the majority of the shooting game tournaments held in that forum since that point.
So it sounded like it was more of like a trolling, rebelling against whatever the tournament was, rather than what people typically would think of it. Well, they're fake scores and they're cheating, but it's like, based off what I'm hearing, is that it was more to prove some kind of point or whatever. Is that kind of what it was? Do you know what the point was? Was it that shmup tournaments are stupid? I'm guessing.
I mean, I know like a couple of those people there like definitely don't think that it's a good idea to just focus on like a game for just a week only and then move on to the next thing. So.
Right, I've heard that a lot too. I don't really do well in that format personally, so that's just me though.
Yeah, I gotcha. But I guess these guys have like a ton of beef on it. They're just like, why not just see how far we can get away with this here? And just kind of rope some other people into it. And because of the way that the format was at the time, nobody really suspected it until, other people kind of mentioned it and then did their own investigations. And then, of course, the logs just getting leaked as well.
Yeah. Having been someone who's organized some like Discords and, various shmup activities, Shmup Slam and stuff like that, where I was trolled, and stuff like that. I think it's interesting, depending on the organizer's personality, how that trolling affects them, right? Where I had people submitting fake names and fake scores to Shmup Slam, and they're just messing with me or whatever.
Right.
I feel like to them, they imagined me as some kind of, I don't know, like a high school principal, and I was like getting all mad. How could you,
Yeah, I remember that at the time too, and it's just like stupid.
Yeah. The thing is, I have to, just from my personal experience hanging around people, like some people love to troll. Once you get 2 or 3 people trolling, everyone wants to troll now. It's like, oh, we're all trolling now, and everyone joins in. This kind of sounds like that's what happened.
Definitely. And the thing was too is that the scores Gus did were actually legit, but because he was kind of seen as like the ringleader behind that, then he basically got zeroed out for everything he participated in.
Oh yeah. That's the story, huh? So that one was people more of like, that's an interesting incident of people kind of just
it's not really
around.
it's not really like pure cheating per se, but it's kind of just like, why don't we see like how far we can just take this, and then because there's no sort of verification to kind of affirm the results before it happens, then this causes additional like hassle that people have to deal with.
It's almost like the YouTube videos that people make where they submit fake scores and then make a YouTube video all about it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
This is better natured than the YouTube videos because they're just trolling to troll. There's really no kind of like gain other than that. But how do you feel about those falsified YouTube videos? Because I got to talk about them. We're not getting out of this episode without me talking about them. Where they, they make the video
for sure.
Like, this is how I cheated. And then, I don't know, like the first one I saw, I think Retro's first one, I felt like, okay, this one is actually legitimately making some points. And okay, I accept this as a premise for your video. But then I started seeing one after another, and some of them are on like tiny speed games where the moderators are just not actual moderators. They're just dudes that put scores on the board because someone has to do it, right? And so those ones I'm kind of like, when they're like, the moderators aren't cracking down, it's like, the moderator of like a 8-person board, you're getting mad at them? So I don't know. Those always kind of, they've gotten to be a pet peeve of mine where I feel like, because, I mean, how serious are some of these speed games where you really expect the moderators to go through your task videos with a fine-tooth comb or whatever?
Yeah, especially if it's like little-known stuff that sometimes nobody's like competing against you, or like 5-10 people at most.
Okay, so we got the SDGT Rebellion 2012. And so now the next one, it keeps on giving, 2017. Tell me what happens here, because this one you brought to my attention.
Right, so I actually was there when it happened, but Trap hosted a shooting game tournament basically at the end of 2017. And during week 3, we were playing this game. It's a write-in club made by alumni, which has made such great classics as Zing Zing Zip and Rezon, which is a horrible R-Type clone. But this game we were playing here was called Mad Shark. And very annoying game with the whole way the stage design is done, and sometimes with the scrolling. But basically what happened here was people were just kind of posting, screenshots and scores. And the main, even though like the top 3 had to be verified for video replays just to ensure that there was compliance, there was a guy who posted a 4.4 million all score named Deadlier. And the crazy thing on his screenshot, I remember at least when I was seeing it, was that he had 4 extra lives when I saw even higher clear scores that maybe only, there was like one guy that had maybe 2 lives remaining or it's like 3 lives remaining when he cleared. Then one person just didn't have anything at the end. And they had like 5.1 million. So it's just kind of odd how he had all of his lives still remaining, but it was a lower scoring clear than the others. So I think what ended up happening, and this is just based off my recollection here because the actual information pertaining to this was in a Discord server channel that ended up getting deleted. But basically what happens is that I think tournament organizer Trap ended up taking a look into Deadlier's like submission and was just asking him like if he had anything to kind of show his evidence, just because it seemed weird that the score was like that and he had all those extra lives. And then Deadlier submitted some sort of video or IMP to verify this, but it didn't match up with what was presented on screen there. So basically, I think based on the content of the video, Trap made a decision to just go ahead and ban the guy from that tournament and also void out his score for that week. And then afterwards, he made some posts on the farm where he's just like, I'm going to organize my own tournament with some really kind of, he was really big on just like details, but it ended up not happening. And then as far as I recall, he still like comments on stuff somewhat regularly, but that's pretty much as far as I know about it.
So how did you think he got the high score or the lowest kind of score with the high life count exactly? Like, how would that have been possible if he was cheating?
I'm not really sure. I mean, he could have just... My memory is really sketchy about this game because I haven't played it at all since that tournament, but I remember like my best attempt that was getting on that last stage or whatever. You do get points for just incrementally picking up extra like power ups after you've gone ahead and maxed it out. There's all the other point items as well that you can pick up. But the only thing I could think of is that maybe he was like intentionally missing some of those extra like score items here and there. But it just seemed really weird, at least like at the time, where other people were getting like 4.9 alls, 4.5.0, 5.1, and then his was just like a 4.4, but not missing anything at all. It's a little difficult for me to just assess in that case because I don't think anybody besides Trap himself was like overseeing like the actual controversy here. But basically, I guess based on the evidence he was presented, he had to make a calculated decision whether to keep him in the tournament or not, and just probably felt like there wasn't enough evidence to, keep a score in there, given he's claimed that he cleared the game with that one screenshot only. Whatever IMP/video evidence there was, just not exactly matching up, doesn't really inspire a whole lot of confidence either.
Right. So maybe he, I don't know, used some like frame advance or something on some of the harder sections. Yeah, so that was a more recent one. And you're saying after that tournament you're saying that Trap was just kind of like, forget it after that?
I don't know if it was necessarily forget it, but he's probably just been busy with other stuff. But because I mean, to organize like those type of tournaments, it does involve like quite a bit of planning. You got to figure out who to put people on teams for, and how to know which games you're going to pick for people. And I mean, I don't want to exactly like say I understand like why we've had to wait like more than a year and there hasn't been like another Trap Machine game tournament, but could just be due to like other stuff that's going on. But he is going to be participating in the next upcoming Chalice Cup, so
nice. Yeah, I'm hoping that I don't know, I get my act together for November. Because right now my motivation is just like, play Dodonpachi, so... I don't know what it is. I'm cursed whenever I try to play these tournaments because I just want to play Dodonpachi.
Same, but hey, Sky Adventure's gonna be easy clear.
So, this next one is, I think, just funny. It cracks me up. The Megan Crimson claiming the massive scores. I don't think anyone for a second believed the guy. So, go through this story for the listeners. This one's funny.
You mean Megan Crimson claim
Yep.
massive scores? Okay, let me just pull this up. They posted a topic called I think this is called cave games. I don't know why they titled it that, but and then they're like high scores I got using different characters, and they list ESP raw day where it's 43 million for Yusuke, 41.6 million for JV5, Yori 38.8, ESP Galuda is 73 million, 71 million. Pro Gear is 355 million, Bolt is 363 million, which is, I'm pretty sure that's over world record tier. And DP, they post Type A 752.8 million laser type, Type B 711 million, and Type CS 729.5 million.
So, for listeners who aren't in the know of these cave game scores, these scores are world record tier scores he's reporting. And he's reporting them all at once, too. So, he had a long week, that's for sure. Getting all those world record scores.
Yeah.
Some hyperbolic Titan chamber type stuff right there.
I think the funniest part is that, because the first three posts are all on the same day within a few minutes of each other. On the third post, he mentions for DDP, 3 different scores, Type AL 702, Type BL 619, and CS 695. And then someone's why are you... Someone noticed, why are you posting different scores? And it takes a while for him to just get back. But then he just posts even more stuff, for Dodonpachi, I think for Type A, 73.4 million, Type B, 69 million, Type 65. He also does Katsui, which 544.8 million, and for Panzer Jagger, 571.8 million. And then I think the hilarious one that stands out to me is that he does Farf, and that's just 9.4 million, which it's why would you put a normal... He's going through all this effort just to show I got world record scores, no verification, no proof whatsoever, but I'm just going to post an actual believable Farf score in the middle of all of this.
That's the diamond in the rough right there. What was the follow-up with this? Because I was kind of following the thread, and people were making fun of him in it. But after that, whatever became of this dude? Did he just disappear? Did he continue posting ridiculous scores? What's the story?
So I think the story there is just that when people call him out on that, he was just going ahead and mentioning that because someone else posted a joke score where Pro BPS, I think, was trolling the guy and saying Type AS 902 billion, and it was wow, how did you make high score like that? It's dude. And I think there's just a couple one-off posts here and there where someone's mentioning I think you troll him back and he's just oh yeah, I got the score because the deck is in practice, and then Megan Crips is I still can't believe. He. If you shot type, you will ignore some enemies and B's bonuses. I think you should believe you get that score if you use type AL. What does that even mean?
So, how long does this go on for the people out there? How many scores does this guy report?
I think he did 1, 2, 3. I think he did a total of 4 different score posts, and then that was pretty much it. And then people are just kind of commenting what's going on here? Ban this person. Nobody leaves your scores. And then the only thing the person's done since then is just comment on someone else's video. I think they just comment on BOS's Strikers 45-2 all run, as well as their Gunbird 2 all run. And that was it. And they just disappeared completely afterwards.
Here's the question, the conspiracy theory. Is this post an inside job? That's what I was kind of wondering as I'm reading through it. Is it someone who is a member of the Shmup forum making an alt account and just trolling people?
I mean, that's always a possibility because I've seen people, even though they seen people be like, oh, they act a certain way where it's like, didn't encounter this person in the past and they got banned from the farm, but they're somehow here again. And it's like possible, but I don't know the entirety of that situation besides that thread. So
that shows that, yeah, you do need some kind of social clout and reasonable expectation when you're posting scores, even if we don't require video proof necessarily. Like, you can't just drop world record scores out of nowhere.
Yeah, I just world records across the board, multiple games, multiple play styles.
I respect him for does he do the full Dodonpachi sweep? Does he play all the ship types? Except, does he do an ABC?
I think for the ones he posted for Dodonpachi, it's just type AL, BL, and CS.
Okay, so he does a half sweep. He gets half the ships done. I wanted the full. I wanted every single ship. World record.
Oh, actually, well, yeah. I mean, there's one other post they mentioned where it's like the first one that they posted with all the world records for those 3 types he selected. These are my real high scores using different ships. And then there's 3 other ones that are mentioned in that third post. He says, oh, this is the high score of my best friend Vince Orb, or whatever. Like, that does not sound believable at all.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's the same shot types too for the supposed friend of his.
I'm just waiting for the day. Come on, people. Okay, so next time you get caught cheating, here's my legal advice to you. This is the golden excuse. Say your account got hacked, and they posted all these scores and everything under your account, and you've actually been on vacation for a month. And you came back, and this is what you found.
Sorry, guys. My friend hacked into my account and posted these really awesome scores. You should probably ask him for more information.
Exactly.
That one was just kind of ridiculous. I don't think anybody really believed it, but still funny to touch on.
So, we've gone through a lot of the notable specifics. So I was talking with some other people about the topic because, like I said, I don't have a whole lot of experience, witnessing this firsthand or anything. And also comparing it to the other shit show that's going on in the speedrunning community. And I'd actually say overall, as far as I'm aware, cheating in shmups really isn't that much of an issue as of today. It's not this widespread concern like it is in speedrunning. I think the reasons for that are, for one, it's a smaller community.
Yeah,
and
way smaller.
I feel like there's a certain level of pride you have as a shmup player. Okay. I don't know how substantial this is, but I'm going to put it out there anyway, where, I don't know, like, there's a certain level of pride you have as a shmup player, and so even stuff like tassing and, those types of things that seem kind of fun in speedrunning, it's really not as compelling as just legit scores, legit runs, and so I feel like, I don't know, there's a more social dynamic to playing shmups than there's often with speedrunning. Where, you don't just show up. I don't just show up one day and be like, hey, I 2-all Dodonpachi. Like, it's like this journey of communicating with all the players, struggling, talking about it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a kind of a journey to shmups where, and I also feel like as a genre, even if you do cheat, it's super hard to create a convincing cheat unless you are already a really good player. And you just don't feel like playing, I guess, and you want to just cheat. But with a task, for instance, like that Dodonpachi task, that's a 2-all. That is the most ridiculous thing to anyone who plays Dodonpachi, who, you don't have to be a world record player. You just have to know how to dodge some of the patterns to be like, what is going on in this video? This is clearly fake. So I feel like...
Right.
And another interesting thing, I got to touch on this too, is that I was thinking about this earlier today. Even if you cheated... Unless you were like our buddy Megan Crimson here and just made up the scores, I'm not sure you could get yourself a world record through tassing in some of these games. Like, you couldn't in Dodonpachi unless you knew the score glitch, right? You could task Dodonpachi all day, every day, until you figure out that score glitch, you still won't get the world record.
Yeah, and I see it in other games too, especially like some of the stuff I've gone through where it's like there's specific methods where it's like you're not going to get the score unless like you already have at least this base level competency and you know that your roots are going to score high enough to meet that target. Otherwise, you're just not going to hit it no matter what.
Yeah. For instance, for me in Garega, like I'm just kind of dipping my toes in Garega and kind of starting to learn it. If I woke up tomorrow and tasked a Garega 2-all, or not 2-all, a Garega clear, I don't know how convincing that would be, because it'd be like, wow, Mark, you jack the rank super freaking high, like your boss strategies make no sense. Do you know what I mean? You have to have that foundation of knowledge to even produce a convincing fake to begin with.
Yeah, because then otherwise people are just going to pick it clean relatively easily. I mean, another example is probably the World Long Plays Ride and Runs, because that game, it's very demanding that you basically you gotta follow your route and be strict when dodging, or else you're just going to eat the dust. And especially in later stages when patterns just get fast,